Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode 108 of Be With Me. We're in the book of Acts, and we're starting chapter 17, and something really caught my eye today. I'm going to title this, Taking a Big Gulp of Suffering for Our Big Gulp of Sin. Paul and Silas are heading down the Grecian peninsula, and they've gone to Philippi, and then they're going to head south. Here they go. Now, when they had passed through Amphipolis and Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica, where there was a synagogue of the Jews. And Paul went in, as was his custom, and on 3 Sabbath days he reasoned with them from the Scriptures, explaining and proving that it was, this is my phrase of the day, it was necessary for the Christ to suffer. Explaining and proving that it was necessary for the Christ to suffer and rise from the dead, and saying, this Jesus whom I proclaim to you is the Christ. And some of them were persuaded and joined Paul and Silas, and did a great many of the devout Greeks, and not a few of the leading women. But the Jews were jealous, and taking some of the wicked men of the rabble, they formed a mob and set the city in an uproar, and attacked the house of Jason, seeking to bring them out of the crowd. And when they could not find them, they dragged Jason and some of the brothers before the city authorities, shouting, these men who have turned the world upside down have come here also. And Jason has received them, and they are all acting against the decrees of Caesar, saying that there is another king, Jesus. And the people and the city authorities were disturbed when they heard these things. And when they had taken money as security from Jason and the rest, they let them go. All right, so one fun thought, and that is, I was thinking about these wicked men of the rabble. And I was thinking, like, hey, if you're picking a team like to play Jeopardy or something, or if you're picking a team to play rugby, or if you're picking a team to sing a musical or something, you're going to pick very different people. So what kind of people do they pick here to form a mob? Well, they take wicked men of the rabble. It's like some people are just are just really good at this particular thing, which is, be a wicked man of a rabble and ready to riot. So these people. So what's a riot? It's the people that you can get so mad at something that they attack not just that thing, but they attack something else. So they're so mad at, for example, like you would be so mad at someone's politics or policies, you'd go burn down a grocery store. That has nothing to do with it. That's called a riot. And here, they're so mad at Paul that they're going to go attack a building, the building of Jason. So that was a humorous thing. That's not my serious thing for today. The serious thing is this line. I'm just stuck on this. So they're in Thessalonica, and they're reasoning and explaining and proving and using the Old Testament scriptures and proclaiming that it was necessary for Christ to suffer. And I was thinking of the movie, The Passion of the Christ, the Mel Gibson movie, and it's just absolutely disturbing. If you watch it, you just want to throw up for 2 hours. Why? And you kind of finish like, why all the suffering? Why does the suffering have to be this bad? Well, here's the short answer. It's because of the weight of sin. It was all sin for all time, for all people. Okay, that's kind of theoretical. But the part that really hits home, and probably when you watch the movie or you think about this concept, it is my sin. So the unpalatableness of the passion of the Christ and the suffering and the crucifixion, it's all about sin. I don't even know if the word sin is mentioned in the movie, but that's what the movie is about. And the horribleness of the suffering and the passion is how you know that your sins are taken care of. That is, that the suffering was sufficient. So, for example, like let's say the suffering of Jesus just was like a little pinprick. Then I think you maybe would sit here and say, well, that doesn't cover my sins. So think of this. Think of the worst sin that you have ever done. Let's just put that out on the table of your mind and your heart. And you might be tempted to say that God could never or would never or wouldn't have the capacity or the ability to forgive that horrible sin that's out on the table. Well, the cross and the suffering and the passion of the Christ and all the suffering he did before dying is the antidote to that stinking thinking. The cross is the proof that it was necessary, and that the sufficiency of Christ had the ability to forgive that sin. That is, the big bad suffering was necessary for big bad sin. Maybe that'll be my title for today. So the people in Thessalonica, when you kind of wrestle with this, it's really offensive that my sins were that bad that I had to get a guy killed, and not just killed sort of in a regular way, in the most horrible way. It's very unpalatable, and that's kind of why the riot happens, I think. Because it's so unpalatable that I just want to kill the messenger and kill the message and, not deal with this. But I want to put it front and center today. Why? Because it's how the horribleness of Christ's suffering. It's necessary for Christ to suffer. Why was it necessary for Christ to suffer? I'm going to say it again. Why was it necessary for Christ to suffer? So that you would know that your most horrible sin and the collection of your most horrible sins, all of them were sufficiently taken care of. So this podcast is now in season 5, which is in the book of Acts. Season 4 is all about the passion of the Christ, the great week, the suffering, the emotional suffering, the theological suffering, the relational suffering, the positional suffering, and the physical suffering that Christ had to do. So let's study and take a big gulp of the study of the suffering of Christ, maybe by going over those podcasts or whatever. And that's how you know that your big gulp sins are forgiven. You can be forgiven. Your sins have been paid for sufficiently. How do you know? Because it was necessary for Christ to suffer. So let's take a big gulp of our big bad sins, sufficiently covered by the big bad suffering of Jesus. Thanks for listening.